Brendan Fraser had just won the biggest award of his life, but at the microphone his hands shook and his voice kept breaking.
So this is what the multiverse looks like. Oh, my goodness.
This didn't look like an ordinary comeback speech. It looked heavier than victory. To understand that reaction, you have to know what Hollywood once asked his body to survive. And the injuries were only part of the reason that speech looked so painful. Hollywood didn't make Brendan Fraser famous because he looked strong. It made him famous because he made getting hurt look harmless. But that's only half of it. Fraser's appeal was never only physical. He played strong men without making them cold. He could be attractive without acting like he knew it. Even when the joke was on him, he never looked embarrassed by it. Audiences laughed with him, not at him. In School Ties, the role showed that Fraser could handle serious drama, holding his own against a talented young cast.
Son of a bitch! Get the door. Come on! Come on! I don't want to fight him! I don't want to fight him!
But George of the Jungle showed Hollywood something more profitable. Watch how those scenes are actually built. Fraser sees the danger coming. He commits to it anyway. Then comes the impact, the pause, and the embarrassed smile. The joke works because he never treats himself as too important to look ridiculous. In one kind of role, audiences watched him absorb humiliation emotionally. In the other, they watched him absorb trees physically. And that distinction matters. That willingness to look foolish without flinching from it was the same quality Hollywood would eventually stop noticing. It's also the same one audiences would rediscover years later once the joke stopped and the story turned serious. None of it worked without sincerity underneath it. Fraser never played strength as superiority, and he never treated warmth as something to be embarrassed about. That's a harder trick than it sounds. Plenty of comedians get laughs by looking foolish. Far fewer get laughed with, and that's part of why people trusted him before they ever needed to. Hollywood noticed the body first. How long can a body keep making pain look funny? That gift was about to get a much bigger stage and a much higher price. The first Mummy made Fraser a star. The sequels began breaking the body that made him one. Fraser said yes to the role, and it changed the direction of his career. Rick O'Connell turned him into a major action lead. A successful action franchise creates a strange contract. The audience expects the next adventure to feel bigger, but it also expects the hero to look unchanged. Fraser couldn't appear slower, more cautious, or more protective of himself. Rick O'Connell had to keep moving as if the last movie had cost him nothing. Success created demand. Demand meant sequels. Sequels meant bigger stunts. Bigger stunts meant more of Fraser's body on the line. The Mummy Returns followed in 2001. Across 3 films, the franchise earned well over $1 billion worldwide. By 2008, filming the 3rd movie in China, Fraser was doing something specific just to survive it.
I went up on the toes, and the guy holding the rope above me pulled it up a little higher, and I was stuck on my toes. I had nowhere to go but down, and so he was pulling up and I was going down. And then the next thing I knew, my elbow was in my ear.
Forget the box office for a second. Look at what he wore underneath the costume. Tape, ice packs, mountain biking pads, strapped on like armor, every single morning. He'd later describe building himself an exoskeleton, piece by piece, before he could even walk onto set. Before cameras rolled, Fraser was already managing the damage. He wasn't preparing his body to perform at its best, he was preparing it to survive the day. There was no single morning when his body simply failed. The injuries accumulated quietly, one production after another. If your entire career depended on looking physically fearless, when would you admit you were afraid of the next stunt? Fraser's account suggests that managing pain gradually became part of the routine. On paper, he was winning. Physically, he was falling apart. And one incident from the first film showed how dangerous that contract had already become. The warning came during the very first Mummy. The scene called for his character to be strung up by a noose in a prison sequence. During the take, Fraser lost consciousness with the rope around his neck. He came to with a paramedic saying his name.
He knows the location to Hammond Aptra.
To find the city of the dead?
Yeah.
But the physical work continued. Why would someone go back to that kind of danger? The franchise was succeeding, and Fraser was becoming known for it. For an actor becoming closely associated with physical action, stepping back could also carry professional consequences. Nobody was forcing him to keep going. It was the kind of pressure that can make saying no feel professionally risky. By then, protective equipment had become part of the routine. Back surgery, another back surgery a year later because the first didn't hold. A partial knee replacement, vocal cord repair. This wasn't one bad injury. By his own account, Fraser spent close to 7 years cycling in and out of hospitals. Recovery wasn't a break between projects anymore. It became a 7-year part of his life. Surgery, rehabilitation, and physical therapy turned into recurring fixtures of his working schedule. For another actor, a bad knee might have just changed how he walked. For Fraser, it threatened the exact quality Hollywood had built his image around. His entire career had been sold on effortless motion. Now, motion itself came with a cost attached to every single day of work. That cost followed him past the operating room. A performer known for physical ease couldn't easily explain a slower shoot day, or a stunt he'd once done without thinking, now handled by a stand-in. The recovery wasn't just medical, it was a quiet renegotiation of what he was still allowed to be known for. The fall always ended when the scene cut. The pain didn't. His body had sent the bill. But there was another injury Fraser has said no surgery could ever touch. But the event Fraser says damaged his confidence most wasn't an accident, and it didn't happen on a film set. In the summer of 2003, Fraser attended a luncheon hosted by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, the group behind the Golden Globes. As he was leaving, Fraser alleges the group's then-president, Philip Burke, groped him. Fraser told GQ in 2018 that the moment left him feeling sick, like a little kid, like he might cry right there in the room. He went home and told his wife. Then he stayed quiet about it publicly for 15 years.
To come forward and say what I had to, but it took people far more courageous than I was ever considering attempting to be.
Silence didn't mean the event was unimportant. According to Fraser, silence became part of how he tried to survive it. Burke disputed Fraser's account. The FUPA investigated. It concluded that Burke had touched Fraser inappropriately, but said the act wasn't intended as a sexual advance. Fraser said he didn't accept that explanation. Fraser has described fear, shame, and the possibility that speaking publicly could affect his career. For years, Fraser had agreed to let productions throw, suspend, and strike his body. Those risks belonged to a performance. He knew the scene. He knew the character. At the luncheon, he says that sense of choice disappeared. Fraser has said the Golden Globes all but stopped inviting him afterward. He's wondered aloud whether the two things were connected. The FA has denied any link, stating publicly that his career decline had nothing to do with the organization. Nobody can prove that connection either way. At the same time, his marriage ended, his family life changed, and he later lost his mother. His body had reasons to stop. Now, so did his confidence. But Fraser kept working, even when most audiences stopped noticing. What happens when an actor keeps working but the audience has already decided he disappeared? Brendan Fraser didn't disappear. Hollywood simply stopped looking in his direction. He didn't stop acting. What disappeared was the scale of the attention around him. Through the years that followed, he kept working. In The Affair, he appeared heavier, quieter, and more guarded than the adventure star many viewers remembered. Some people barely recognized him, but the emotional openness was still there.
I swear I was right here last night with my wife and my kid.
You've been stalking me since Fishkill. You tried to hit me with your fucking car.
Listen, you're confused.
He also took a supporting part in No Sudden Move. Neither role made headlines.
Who's everyone? For our purposes, no one. Look, they agreed to match your price. $3,000 up front, $4,500 upon completion.
Then, in 2019, he took on something else entirely. Cliff Steele had once been a celebrity, defined by speed, ego, and physical control. After an accident, his mind survived inside a broken mechanical body. Other people saw the machine first. The wounded person inside it came second. That's the character Fraser played in Doom Patrol. He didn't physically perform every moment of it. The role depended on voice, not stunts. But he carried the anger, grief, and dark humor underneath the metal shell. Every scene asked the same question the audience had quietly been asking about Fraser himself. Was the person still in there, underneath what everyone saw first? The parallel with his own public image was hard to miss.
So now she's the bad guy. Okay, let's talk about you, Chief. You told me my daughter was dead. By lying.
Around this same stretch, something else started building. Fans online began revisiting old interviews and old clips, the ones where his warmth was hardest to miss. Younger viewers who'd never seen him in a theater discovered a version of him they'd never expected. Public sympathy turned into something more active. People coined a nickname for it, the Renaissance.
The internet is so behind you. We're so supportive. There are so many people out there who love you, and we're rooting for you, and we can't wait to see what you do next.
Shucks, ma'am.
That affection mattered, but it didn't create Fraser's talent. And it didn't rescue him by itself. It showed that much of the public affection had survived even when the visibility hadn't. He kept reading for parts. He kept showing up. What he needed wasn't a role that proved he could still run through a jungle. He needed one that didn't ask him to move much at all. The role that revived Brendan Fraser's career asked him to give up the thing that had built it. Movement. For years, directors had valued him for what his body could do. Then, Darren Aronofsky needed something else entirely. Aronofsky had spent nearly a decade searching for the right actor. He later told Variety he'd considered nearly anyone for the part. The problem was never talent. It was finding an actor whose presence gave him a reason to finally make the film. Putting Fraser in it, he said, was that reason. Fraser brought something few conventional casting choices could offer. Audiences carried their own history with him into every scene. A decade earlier, audiences still associated him primarily with his former leading man image. By 2021, the qualities once hidden behind action and comedy could finally carry the entire performance. The role was Charlie, a reclusive, severely obese English teacher trying to reconnect with a daughter he'd lost touch with. The film was called The Whale.
You have it?
It's almost done. You can wait.
Don't mistake this for autobiography. Charlie isn't Brendan Fraser. The performance worked because Fraser didn't simply replay his own pain. He built a separate person, hopeful, frustrating, intelligent, and sometimes difficult to forgive. Still, the isolation and a body being judged by everyone who looked at it created an echo that was hard to miss. To become Charlie, Fraser wore a prosthetic suit that could add hundreds of pounds to his frame. Getting into it took hours in a makeup chair before every scene. The film's portrayal of obesity was heavily debated. Some critics argued it asked audiences to empathize with Charlie while still treating his body as spectacle. That debate remains part of the film's legacy. But even many critics of the film separated those concerns from what Fraser did with the role. And what he did was quiet, restrained movement. A voice that never reached for sympathy, a refusal to play Charlie only as misery, even in his worst scenes with his daughter. Those extra beats make Charlie feel like he's searching the other person's face for permission to keep hoping. Most of the performance happens in stillness, not speech. Fraser lets a full breath pass before answering a hard question. He never rushes past it, even when the script would allow it. His eyes do more work than his lines. He holds a look a second too long or breaks it early out of something close to shame. That restraint is a craft choice, not a limitation the prosthetics forced on him.
I know I'm not supposed to be around her. You could probably call the police if you wanted to.
Christ.
Then came Venice. The film ended. Fraser stood, and the applause kept going. Each time he tried to leave, the applause continued. He stood beside the director who had given him the most demanding role of his later career, while every reaction remained visible. Venice didn't guarantee an Oscar. It did something more immediate. It showed Fraser that the audience was ready to see him as a leading actor again. The performance quickly turned Fraser into one of the season's leading Best Actor contenders. Critics' Choice, the Screen Actors Guild.
Thank you. Thank you for this honor, Critics' Choice Association. Thank you.
He skipped the Golden Globes entirely. After everything you've just learned about his history with that organization, you already know why. 30 years after Hollywood first rewarded him for taking the hit, Fraser walked toward a microphone to be recognized for everything that remained.
The Oscar goes to Brendan Fraser. The Whale.
Now watch that Oscar speech again. Fraser reached for the language of the sea. He described the years since as a dive to the ocean floor, with the airline to the surface held by the people who mattered most to him. He joked that this must be what the multiverse looks like, and the room laughed through its tears. He paused more than once, gathering himself before he could keep going.
It's been like I've been on a diving expedition on the bottom of the ocean, and the air on the line to the surface is on a launch being watched over.
Those shaking hands no longer look like nerves alone. He thanked his director, his co-stars, his sons in the crowd. Then he said something simple, 30 years of things not coming easily.
I started in this business 30 years ago, and things, they didn't come easily to me, but there was a facility that I didn't appreciate at the time until it stopped.
He wasn't being modest. 30 years is the exact distance between his first film and that stage. Every surgery, every quiet year, every luncheon he didn't talk about, all of it fit inside that one sentence, even though he never named any of it directly. Here's what this Oscar didn't do. It didn't erase what happened to him. It didn't give him back the years or repair everything in his body, or make Hollywood into an innocent institution. No trophy does that. Recognition arrives in a moment. Recovery doesn't. What it offered was recognition, not for the version of Brendan Fraser who could take a hit and keep smiling, but for the man who was still there after that version stopped being enough. Hollywood first noticed Brendan Fraser's body for what it could survive on camera. Decades later, it finally recognized what the man inside it had survived off camera. They called it a comeback. Watching him on that stage, it looked more like resurfacing.
My manager, Joanne Colonna, Jennifer Plant, and my best first mate, Jeannie. Thank you again, each one and all. I'm so grateful to you. Good night.
Subscribe for more carefully researched stories about the people behind famous performances.